Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 7th, 2025 Town Council meeting. We're actually made it to 2025.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to leave non-public.
Second.
Motion to leave non-public by Councilor Granessi, second by Councilor Cherichello. On the motion, Councilor Cherichello?
Yes.
Councilor Webb?
Yes.
Councilor Foote?
Yes.
Councilor Flood?
Yes.
Councilor Granessi?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Motion passes 6-0. All right. And we don't need to seal them, correct?
We don't need to.
We don't need to seal those, so we should
No?
be good there. No.
Okay.
We're going to make it all public in about 10 minutes anyway. Good. All right. Councilor Cherichello, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Oh. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll start with our roll call. Councilor Cherichello,
Good evening.
Councilor Webb,
Present.
Councilor Foote,
Good evening.
Councilor Flood.
Good evening.
Oh, good evening. Councilor Granessi,
Good evening.
and good evening from the chair. Councilor McGeckern is en route to join us. He called a bit ago that he is stuck in traffic, so he will be here as soon as possible. All right. Motion to open public forum. All right, motion to open public forum by Councilor Cherichello, second by Councilor Foote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Public forum is open. If you'd like to come up and speak, come on up. Just state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, councilors, Madam Clerk. Whoa, pretty loud. I had attended the Gateway meeting.
Oh, sorry, we know who you are, but can you state your name and address for the record?
Tom Carden, 2 Cunningham Drive. I guess I was thrown off by the mic. I attended the Gateway meeting last night, and one of the ideas for the District 3, where all the houses are over there, they had down mixed use, and I'd spoken about the mixed use, and I think mixed use in this town has not done what it was really meant to do. And I use Abbott as the example. I know a couple of weeks ago at the zoning board meeting, the LNG came to the zoning board and asked for a variance on the commercial part of the building. And the LNG had come with this big plan with all these apartments and 10,000 square feet of commercial, and now there's going to be nothing there. And we're basically stuck with another apartment complex. And I've talked about mixed use before, and even the town of Londonderry is seeing the problems that they're going to have with housing. The planning board wanted to put a moratorium on apartments because it's just it involves so much. It has a big water, sewage, police, fire, schools, especially traffic. So I just I've spoke about this before, and I hope something is done about that. Because I just don't want to see apartments. I have an understanding that Santander Bank is going to be closing, and that there's going to be apartments going in there. And the last thing that the town needs right now is more apartments. The main thing that we need is we need something that's going to add to our tax base. We need a good commercial base. So I hope that doesn't happen. And the last thing is, I had asked at the meeting if the town of Derry had been working with the town of Londonderry with the 4A project, because I would think that that if both towns get together, we could do something that's advantageous to both towns. I know we probably don't get along all that well with them, but I really hope that the town reaches out and they work with Londonderry so that we can have it's a perfect spot there for both towns to do some development there. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam
anyone
Chair,
online?
if we could remind folks who have dialed in using their phone that they can raise their hand if they so desire by pressing *9.
Okay. If there's
perhaps
anybody
they-
out there, was it *9?
*9 to raise your hand.
Give it a moment, just in case.
And with that, seeing none, rise online, Madam Chair.
Close.
Motion by Councilor Chercello to close public forum, second by Councilor Foot. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstention? Okay, public forum is closed. Consent agenda, we have a few items. Item 25-01 to approve the non-public minutes from December 17th, 2024. 2502 to approve the minutes from the December 17th, 2024 meeting. 25-03, ordinance 2025-001 to amend the zoning ordinance, section 165. There'll be a public hearing on that on January 21st. 25-04, resolution 2025-005 to accept unanticipated revenues from Primex, and there will be a public hearing on January 21st for that as well. Is there a motion to approve consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Councilor Chercello, seconded by Councilor Foot to approve the consent agenda. On the motion, Councilor Chercello,
Yes.
Councilor Webb,
Yes.
Councilor Foot.
Yes.
Councilor Flood,
Yes.
Councilor Ganassi.
Yes.
Councilor McGeckon.
Yes.
And chair votes yes, motion passes 7-0. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, under Chair's report, we just have one very exciting topic tonight. We have a new town administrator, so I'm going to kind of go through. I'm going to keep you in suspense for a moment, just to kind of bring you up to where we are, and then we can make an announcement here. So I've given updates along the way, but I just want to kind of, now that it's over, summarize what the process looked like for everybody so that everybody's aware of kind of how we got here. So we initially put a plan together. We worked very closely with both Dave Karen and Catherine St. Ledger to kind of bring the counselors together, get input, and move forward. And so the process started with, as a council, us getting together to decide what those minimum requirements looked like for a TA, put that together, and also kind of, I think we set minimum requirements as well as desired requirements that we wanted to look for, and then posted the position based on what we came up with. We had 16 initial applicants for the position. There was a screening by Human Resources to kind of make sure those 16 met the minimum requirements that we had set. Of those 16, 13 met those requirements, so there were 16 that either had no experience in town management at all, or I forget, there were a couple of other reasons, but they didn't meet those requirements. So 13 resumes and portfolios and whatever else they sent came to the council. And we met again after we'd reviewed those, and were able to narrow down to 7 candidates that we felt had enough experience to move on to that next phase. So those 7 candidates were then sent a series of essay questions that they needed to submit, and those varied different aspects of the town administrator role. Once we had those back, again, council evaluated those, came back together. I will say that during that process, we did have one additional applicant reach out. I would think it was a day or two after those essay questions had gone out. The council felt that they met the minimum requirements, and since we hadn't moved through the essay phase, we allowed them to submit. So ultimately had 8 individuals that submitted essay responses. From there, based on those responses that came in, there were really 3 candidates that we felt should move on to actual in-person interviews. So that was all before they met anybody. We got down to those 3 candidates. After meeting those 3 with the council, we had one meeting with all of the council. If you can't sit with us for the interview, you probably can't sit with us for the next however many years. So came in with all of us. We narrowed down to 2. And then sent those 2 through an interview with all of the senior staff in town. So based on all of that extensive interview, we came down to 1. And I think we've made a very good choice that our new town administrator, we'll have to officially vote momentarily, but our new town administrator is Mike Fowler. So congratulations.
Yep.
So we do have just official resolution to kind of make this all official. So I don't know, you do have a resolution in front of you. If anyone would like to read the
Madam Chair.
resolution?
I will read the resolution number 2025-006 to appoint a town administrator. Whereas Section 8.2 of the town charter requires the town council appoint a town administrator, and whereas the current administrator is scheduled to retire on June 30th, 2025, and whereas the town council conduct an extensive search to identify qualified candidates to assume responsibilities of town administrator, and whereas the town council has identified a candidate who possesses the requisite character, skills, and experience to serve as town administrator. Now therefore be it resolved in council, the town council hereby appoints Michael Fowler as town administrator effective July 1st, 2025, and approves an employment agreement with Mr. Fowler for the period March 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2028. This resolution take effect immediately upon its passage.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Counselor Foote, a second by Counselor Ganesi. On the motion, Counselor Cherichello?
Yes.
Counselor Webb?
Yes.
Counselor Foote?
Yes.
Counselor Flood?
Yes.
Counselor Ganesi?
Yes.
Counselor McEachern?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you to all of those that applied, and congratulations, Mike. We're looking forward to working with you in a new capacity. Thank you. All right. Should we do some photo? Yeah, yeah. I know, I want to say, before we move on, but do you like to come up, Mike, and say a few words, or put you on the spot right away?
Put you on the hot seat right now. So first of all, I just want to thank the town council for this process. I felt it was very fair and above board in terms of, evaluating the skills and things that I bring to the community. I also want to thank Dave. Certainly I'm going to be leaning on him to learn some of the tricks over the next, 4 to 6 months as we embark through the budget process. I think it's going to be very important for us to look as a community at some of the challenges and opportunities ahead. We keep talking about the construction of Exit 4A, some of the developments that are coming forth, the utility, the infrastructure. There's some really, really good things going on in this community. And obviously, I also was attracted to taking this opportunity because of, the collaboration between many of our volunteers, our groups, our nonprofits. All those baselines within the community will springboard us to more and more and more. It's going to be a busy, 3, 4, 5 years, but I think in my role previously as the Public Works Director, I've gained confidence and trust in, the people in this community, with the council and with the staff. And I really look forward to keeping the good momentum that we have. So I promise you that I will work in the best interest of this community and keep us moving forward. I'm very excited, and I would also want to thank my family for providing an opportunity. I had young kids when I started here 20 years ago. They are almost all have licenses, and I want to make sure that my wife understands that I do appreciate when I'm gone for town council meetings that, I don't come home till 9 or 9:30 sometimes just because that's the way that it goes. So I want to recognize my family as well. But thank you to town council. Thank you to the community for your trust and faith. And we'll be working with you. See you a little bit later on tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We should probably do a picture, right? Yeah. All right. The obligatory picture. All right. I do want to just take a moment to thank, I think she might have screwed out, but I want to thank Catherine St. Ledger for all her help in this, as well as Dave Karen for having this on the radar. So that you may have noticed in the resolution that Mike's official agreement starts in March, even though Dave will be here until June or the end of June, so that there is that time for overlap and learning the job and getting comfortable. We have the benefit that Mike's already in the organization, but kind of moving to that new role. So thank you to everybody that's been involved in helping get through this many-month process. But now we're finally there. Okay. We'll turn things over to Dave for Town Administrator
Okay,
report.
thanks. First presentation this evening is Mark Fleischer, and our auditor will lead us through a review of our financial performance for FY24, which ended this past June 30th. Mark?
Good evening. This is Scott McIntyre from CBiz, formerly known as Markham and formerly known as Melanson. And he's here to present our FY24 audit report.
Thank you, Mark, and to the council, thank you very much for the invitation to come in tonight. As Mark indicated, I'm one of the managing directors, essentially the equivalent of a partner in a CPA firm at CBiz. He also gave you a little history. I'll take a second and just maybe somewhat explain this to the council. A couple of years ago, I was with, and the town's auditor was Melanson, a large regional firm that had done auditing in the state of New Hampshire for 40 years. We chose to merge with a national firm, Markham, primarily because there were no students, very few students going into accounting, and either fewer students staying in accounting and taking the CPA exam, so we needed to avail ourselves of some additional resources. And then a year and a half later, it was announced, and surprise to me, that Markham was acquired by CBiz. So we completed this audit as Markham because it was completed in January. Pardon me, in December. But in January, we started issuing any remaining audit opinions as CBiz. So I'll take questions on that if there is any in the council. But I kind of wanted to just let you know that it's really still the same people that have been doing audits in the state of New Hampshire and New England for many, many years. So even though the name has changed on 2 occasions. Earlier this evening, I met with Mark and members of the Finance Committee and walked through our audit of your financial statements and the ACFR, the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, in a decent amount of detail. It's not my intention to go into the same amount of detail tonight, but I do want to hit the high points. It's my understanding that the members of the council have the ACFR, the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. And Mark, I believe, also forwarded to each of you what I would call the governance letter. If you don't have it, it's not that important, but I'm going to talk quickly about it. We call it the governance letter, and that's really just something that the industry of public accounting has developed in referring to it as. But we refer to it as that because our professional standards require that we report to those charged with governance. That's the actual phrase in the professional standards. So, and it tells you a lot in that letter. It tells you the scope of the work that we did that was outlined in our engagement letter. It talks about the qualitative aspects of your financial statements. In particular, it talks about significant estimates that are in there. And I should preface this by saying that many of these things that I'm going to talk about that are in the letter are required communications. So while we have fulfilled the professional responsibility in transmitting this letter to you, it's always good to recap it, I think, in a setting like this. So I was talking about the qualitative aspects of the estimates in your financial statements. Really, it comes down to pension and OPEB, those two significant liabilities and related accounts. I'll speak to them a little bit and take questions on anything further that the council may want to discuss in that area. Some of the real positive things that are in the governance letter is we found we had no significant journal entries as a result of performing our work. We found the books and records to be in good working order that led to not having to propose any significant adjustments for your financial statements to be materially fairly presented in accordance with GAAP, or generally accepted accounting principles.
There were no disagreements with management on how to apply generally accepted accounting principles. And really, that summarizes it. Oh, it's a relatively new thing. It's outlined in the letter. We are required to discuss any services that we provide that are called non-attest or non-audit services. In Derry, like we do in virtually all of our clients in New England, outside of New England, it's a little bit different, but inside of New England, the audit firms generally help the communities pull this document together. Outside of New England, most of the governments themselves prepare this 100-plus page document all by themselves. That's just not the way it works in New England. My standards, our professional standards require that I tell you that it is not a concern because Mark knows these numbers inside and out, and they all tie to underlying records here in Derry. So, with that overview of the governance letter, for anyone who chooses to follow, I'm going to go to our independent auditors report. If you have a print copy, it's page 15. If you're following on with a PDF, it's an additional 10 pages in, or PDF page 25. The highlight here is that it's the same opinion that you've had for many, many years. Our opinion is that your financial statements are materially fairly presented in accordance with GAAP. Again, that's generally accepted accounting principles. The opinion goes on to tell you the professional auditing standards that we followed. We followed all the applicable standards. It tells you management's responsibility in these statements. They are not my statements. They are not Markham's or CBIZ. They are Derry's financial statements. You have certainly have ultimate responsibility there. It also goes on to talk about our role as auditors and our responsibility with respect to the financial statements. With that said, I'm going to turn all the way over to page 40, print page 40. It would be PDF page 50 if you're following in line with that. Now, before I talk about this page, I just want to remind the council that there are essentially two sets of financial statements in here, both the long-term perspective and what I generally refer to as the short-term perspective. And what the page that I asked you to turn to is the balance sheet on the short-term perspective. If you were to turn back to page 37 and 38, you would see a long-term perspective balance sheet, and there you would see all of the capital assets owned by the town, as well as your net pension liability, as well as your net OPEB liability. And if there are questions in that area, I'm sure I would like to think I will be able to answer them, but most people still turn to the page that I asked you to turn your attention to, page 40. It's your governmental funds balance sheet, and the focus is almost always in the first column of numbers, the general fund, the chief operating fund of the town. And really the first place that most readers turn to is in that first column is the third number up from the bottom, or your unassigned fund balance with an account balance as of June 30th, 2024 of $15.4 million. Once people look at that number, they usually have a couple of questions. The first one is, how does that number compare to the same account balance a year ago? And I can share with you, it's outlined in your report as well, but there's about a $2 million increase in that account balance. So a handsome increase in your unassigned fund balance from $13.4 million at June 30, 23 to $15.4 million at 6/30/24. Now, Derry, like most communities, does have a fund balance policy, and that $15.4 million is essentially about $3 million greater than the requirements as outlined in your fund balance policy. So again, this year, you've not only met your policy requirement, but you've exceeded it as well. Two more quick things that I want to point out on this page, since it does get most of the attention. Right below the number I asked you to focus on, the unassigned fund balance, you have your total fund balance with a June 30th, 2024 account balance of just under $37 million. In total, your fund balance went up approximately $4 million. $2 million of it, as I explained just a minute ago, increased in your unassigned fund balance. The other $2 million, almost all of the other $2 million, was added to your committed fund balance, a couple numbers up from where we first focused on this page. The committed fund balance of almost $3 million. The committed fund balance represents, among other things, your capital reserve funds, your tax increment financing district balances, and some funds that were appropriated for use in the subsequent fiscal year or fiscal year 25. So,
The last page I'd like to turn to goes all the way over to print page 90 or PDF page 100. And this is commonly referred to as your budget versus actual page. And if unassigned fund balance is the first place people turn, in general, the next place they turn to is the general fund budget versus actual results. Because as the name implies, it shows the reader how revenues and expenditures came in or were dispersed compared to the estimates, the budget that was enacted for fiscal year '24. So the focus is on that final column on the right. And you can see about a third of the way down the page, you see total revenues came in excess of the budget by $3.6 million. As it compares to the prior year, a year ago, that account balance, the favorable revenues came in about $3 million. So the 3.6 that came in excess of your budget for fiscal year '24 exceeded the prior year. You can see right above that total there that 1.8, almost $1.9 million of it was in the classification called Other. The majority of that is investment income that was earned where rates increased during fiscal year '24, and so the return was significantly greater than the budget anticipated. Of course, the budget was developed many months prior to even the start of fiscal year '24. About 2/3 of the way down that column, still sticking with the final column there, you see the total expenditures with a favorable variance, meaning the expenditures were less than anticipated by the budget, of just under $1.5 million, $1,455,000. So almost $1.5 million in unspent appropriations. About half of that was in the police and animal control function, and as is also outlined in other places in your financial statements, that classification or that functional expenditure area had 3 vacant positions during fiscal year '24, which led to a little over $750,000 in unspent appropriations. So you add you combine those two things being the favorable revenue results of $3.6 million and the unspent appropriations of almost $1.5 million. Once you take the transfer issues, which is normal and customary to have some small variances there, you focus in the lower right-hand corner of page 90, you see total budgetary results of operations are favorable to about $4.8 million. It's not coincidental that the $4 million, that your overall general fund balance went up $4 million when you have positive budgetary results of 4.8. Another way I try to look at this is equating that 4.8 and translating that over to your $2 million increase in your unassigned fund balance. It's spelled out in your management's discussion and analysis, but I can just summarize it here real quickly. If you were to take, remember I said that some of your committed fund balance was some funds that were appropriated for fiscal year '25. If you are to take that $4.8 million in overall budget excess on page 90, and if you subtract about $2.7 million, which is the total fund balance that Derry used for fiscal year '25, you get about $2.1 million. And that net $2.1 million is what's driving the increase in your unassigned fund balance back on, I think it was page 40, or your general fund balance sheet. That's a super quick walkthrough of the financial statements. I guess I would go back and just reiterate that I think the most important communication a community or those charged with governance can receive from the outside auditor is what I talked about with respect to the governance letter, how the audit process went. And we did not uncover any significant journal entries that were needed, and we had no significant difficulties. And I do want to thank the town for being as well prepared as they were. They were very well prepared. It's a feat to get this completed within a 6-month period of year end, and I want to thank the town and Mark and his staff in particular for their diligence in responding to inquiries, which that's what we do. We are inquisitive auditors, and we need to understand things and test transactions, and the town was very cooperative in working with us to complete the required test work that was needed. So, with that, I'll turn it back to the chair and try to answer any questions that the council may have.
Thank you very much for that. Are there any questions from council? Council Webb?
I just have one question. Again, I'm sort of newer at this thing, so that some of the acronyms I don't know.
Sure.
And you had mentioned in the concerns and liabilities, pensions and OPED. What is OPED, and can you expand on your concerns about those liabilities?
Sure. OPEB, or OPEB, that is an acronym that stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. And when they say other, they mean other than pension. What that specifically means is the lion's share of that liability is retiree health care. As employees retire, they are permitted to stay on the town's group plan, so there is an inherent liability or an implicit liability because the retirees are receiving a benefit while they work that they will utilize in their retirement. So, if I used the word concerned, I should not have. I don't think, I'm not overly concerned about them. Certainly they are significant liabilities. Perhaps the only larger liabilities that you have are your outstanding bonds and loans. But your liabilities for pension and OPEB are not out of line with similar communities in the state. I mean, all the communities other than Manchester are participants in the New Hampshire retirement system, and your net pension liability is your proportional share of that liability. Your OPEB liability is based on the census of employees that you have. You actually have two pieces to your OPEB liability. Is a medical subsidy plan with the state retirement system, and that the town has its own plan. But none of those liabilities are significantly out of line or out of proportionally different than the other communities in the state of New Hampshire.
Other questions?
No?
All right.
Sounds good.
Yeah, looks good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, one of the facets of our economic development strategy is looking at our signage. And as you may recall, the Welcome to Derry signs have been there for quite a while, and they're in need of repair. So Bev has been coordinating a project to freshen those signs up and is looking for input and feedback from the council.
Good evening. As Dave said, some of our signs are really not only in disrepair, but somewhat outdated. They have our old website still on them, and we still do from time to time get calls about that, because people can find the old website if they look hard enough, and that gets confusing. So I was tasked with looking at the 7 signs or sign locations that we have today at various locations at or near the town lines. Some of them need replacement completely. Some of them, because of damage, some of them have missing posts, missing hardware, and so on. So what I did is I engaged with the town's historic commission members to talk about if they had any suggestions, if they had any comments, mainly because in the past I had heard concerns about the dates that were on the original signs. So I think, Owen, if you have a copy of the existing, if you look at that picture to the left, it's pretty beat up, but it says established in 1827. And Historic Commission really felt that that is already stated within the seal, but they felt really strongly that we should put our settled date, and that is 1719, when you think back to East Derry, when the town was originally Londonderry. So we made a few tweaks. We took off the website completely because we were thinking that in the future, sometimes things change and that website may change again. If we want to add it back in, we can do that. It was suggested by the sign company that that could be a straight line piece underneath the original sign that could be replaced at a later date if need be. They enlarged the seal a little bit more and made the lettering a bit clearer on the top, the Welcome to Derry part. So looking for some input as to the design. The sizes would be the same for the majority of them, and some of them will be upsized so that they are all the same size, which is 47.5 by 72 inches. So they're pretty large, so that passersby are able to see it. They are all aluminum composite material, as they are today. And let's see what else. And it is laminate. It says cast over laminate, UV laminate with the white aluminum posts. So similar to what you see today, much fresher. All right, and the other information that you need is for all of them, including installation and hardware. The total estimate that we have at this time is $13,400.37. So I'm looking for some direction or comment or input.
Thank you. Yep, Brian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Bev, I would imagine that this would be coming out of the economic development budget?
We've got our next step, if the council is comfortable with the design, is identify the funding source.
Okay.
I suspect there may be several, maybe some from the TIF districts, maybe some from other line items.
So
We'll look over.
it'll be a mixed source?
Right,
Okay,
that's correct.
all right. Thank you.
Councilor Vanessa?
Thank you. Are they going to be reflective?
You know, I did not ask that question, but I suppose I could ask that question and see what that does to the estimate.
Yeah, because I'm not sure. I forget if the original ones are reflective or not. I know that the lettering is gold for Derry. That's the one on Broadway coming in. That's the horrible one.
Yeah.
It looks like the lettering on that is white.
Yes, we felt that was a crisper, easier to read color.
And it looks like it's a vinyl wrap, vinyl overlay, versus where the other one wasn't. That was more it was vinyl, and I believe it was all leaded, because you can see like the Derry was a two-tone, the gold and the black.
Yep. So it still will be covered. It'll be aluminum on the base with vinyl covering.
What's the, they give us a warranty? I'm curious, I'm trying to remember when these were put in. I think they were before Mr. Karen,
Way before my time as well.
and I don't remember, do you
Yeah.
remember?
I thought when Carol was here,
Yeah, we've had those,
quite a while.
yeah, those signs have been, let's say the early 2000s we put them in.
Yeah.
I think that was part of the Main Street project we did back in the day.
Yeah,
And I know
pretty old.
at some point there was some more add. I know the one by the storage on 28 got knocked down in an accident years ago, and that's been missing for years.
Yep. Yep. We did get all of the locations from Mr. Fowler, and we physically went out and looked, and yes, indeed, some are missing. And one of them, I think, is only had one post remaining. I will look into the warranty question.
Yeah, I'd be just curious, only because of like what happened to the one
Yeah.
downtown that gets beat up.
Yep.
No, someone else can ask a question. I'm trying to find some.
Yeah, I think I'm not crazy about the settled in 1719, and I'd rather have the town saying there, because if these are gonna be in the entrance of town, wherever, there needs to be some sort of a saying there to draw people to Derry. Settled in 1719 doesn't draw anybody into the town.
Yeah.
So, New Hampshire's place to be, or, because that was one that was developed in the early 2000s, may
Yeah.
not be the right saying, but we need something to bring people into town.
We did have a lot of discussion about that. We had a running list
That's just my opinion.
of suggestions. And everything that was thought up, we went on the web and we looked at other slogans. And the thought was all of those seemed to get dated at some point. And Historic really felt strongly about the settled in part because Derry's history is so much older than 1827. And they thought that was really important to reflect that. And when talking about some of the early settlers, the McGregors, and then even, I'm sorry, I'm like a little under the weather.
I'm not suggesting it doesn't need to
yeah.
be there. You need to have something to draw you into town, which is the previous sign had it, established in 1827. If you don't like that, do settled in 1719, but you need a saying to draw people in. That's my opinion. You asked for opinions.
No, thank you.
I don't disagree. I might be an odd duck, but I like getting in my car and I'll drive through all these old towns. And I look for old dates. The older the town is, the more I'm likely to stop and look at an old cemetery, try to find the downtown or a library. The older it is, to me, the cooler it is. I actually didn't realize it was settled that long ago. Pretty cool.
Again, I don't mind having them both there. I don't like losing the town look, the town.
I think the slogans get
They
dated.
should both be there.
I agree.
So I agree with both. The historian in me, I like the settled 1719 there. You mentioned that the sign maker had talked about having something below it that had the website on it. I think both a website and I agree, slogans get dated, right? And so I think neither of those things should go on a primary sign if we want the sign to be something that's kind of current, that something that should change should be on that bottom part that's easier to change out. So I could see still having whatever the slogan is at the time that can be updated. I would not put it on the main sign. I like the main sign the way it is and would put any kind of slogan like that down below. I agree with you. I'm much more likely to stop because the sign said 1650 than because it's the place to be. But I think it should be there too for those that want that.
One sign below with two lines or
Yeah.
two signs below if you want. But
Yeah, I could see doing that.
I think the slogan needs to be there as well as the
I just have a question on the durability of the sign. Are those posts, are they going to be steel or aluminum, or are they steel and aluminum covered in vinyl?
Aluminum covered in vinyl.
Yeah, I have, and again, an expert may tell me my head is up my butt on this, but I did have the concern that with posts that are vinyl covered, that are on the side of a road where there's plows, rocks, and all this other stuff, that they're just not going to have the durability. They're going to get chipped and look crappy after one good solid winter. And I'm wondering if, even if it is a little bit more expensive, if there is a more durable and easier to maintain. I know nothing's perfect. I know, they may need to be repainted at some point, but I just don't think vinyl, I have concerns about the durability of vinyl and plows.
Okay. And just so you know, the way they explained it to me, they would be exactly the way they are today. And they felt those were very durable. I physically drove around to look at them, and other than the ones that were missing, I didn't think they looked beat up, but we can look at that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I would like to see that too. I walk by one of them quite frequently, and up close, it's
Yeah. Of course.
not quite as, no, it's
After
there, it's
many
okay.
years, I
I wouldn't
can
notice
see-
it driving by, but
Yeah.
yeah, I would like to see some pricing on some more durable materials as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
What follow-up, I found, because I have a picture of one of the signs, I was looking at it.
Dave, you want granite?
No granite. They would last longer, but I think that what Counselor Webb brought up, I think the warranty would fall on that. The question
Yep.
is I'm looking at the color rendering. I'm assuming that the green would be
It would be the
Derry
same.
green.
Yeah, it just doesn't translate well in the.
Okay, awesome. That would,
Yep. As to the slogan part, we did talk a lot about that, and not one person on the Heritage Commission was in favor of keeping the current one. So if you want a slogan up there or something to that effect up there, we'll need some direction on how you want to figure out what that is, if it's to be the same thing or something different.
I mean, I think we can look into what that would look like. I think probably, I don't know where we, oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's getting back to the website, actually, we are changing our website name to DerryNH.gov under a free program. Doug's working through that now, but an idea, if you'd like to have a slogan, put that with the website on a bar underneath the sign. It's a lot easier to interchange as the years go by, so, but we'll return with some slogans and see what the council comfortable with, and then we'll just take it from there and go.
That'd be great. Yeah, I think if we could, so it sounds like we want to have some ideas for slogans, what the pricing would be to have that underneath and a potentially more durable materials for the posts there. Would be great. Anything else?
So more like a painted steel for the posts, is that what you're suggesting?
I'm not an expert or anything like that. I just have concerns, and again, my concerns might be wrong. They might say that that is the most durable one. I just want to, I'd rather have a durable option.
Sure.
That's also easy for Public Works if they have to fix.
Yep. Okay.
I was
Chair
just, I was thinking, instead of that slogan or the website, you could do what do they call those, the UPC symbols? So if people, what is it?
QR code.
QR code.
That's not a bad
And then
idea.
that way,
We talked about that as
you
well.
can get to the information if you want it, and then you can put whatever.
I'm gonna make somebody laugh. That's all we need now is like someone to be going by with the sign and they'd be like, hey, you gotta.
Well,
We
you can be
talked about
stopped on
that.
the side of the road, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Well, that's what you say.
But they won't.
Yeah.
That's potentially
Glad
the
you said that,
problem.
Brian.
We did talk about that and thought that that could end up being a problem. Helpful, but
I'm gonna make one last comment.
yeah.
I do like the design of the new sign versus the old one. So I do like the way it is. Yeah, it's more, it's older, it's more colonial, so I like that.
Simpler. Yeah. All right.
Any last questions or comments? Okay, then. Thank you.
All right. We'll be
Feel
back.
better?
Okay, looking at our finances recently, we're gonna track all the fiscal years. You had the FY24 audit presentation. For FY25, as you know, January 1st reflects halfway through the fiscal year. Our revenues are tracking very well. We've met our budget on the interest earnings, and the investment rates were about 75 basis points behind last year, just a reflection of the economy and reduction in the Fed rate. Building permit fees are currently at 82% of the budget. The transfer station revenues are at 76%. And both motor vehicle revenues and ambulance fees are currently at 55% of budget. They're tracking about 5% beyond what we could expect for this time of year. And going to FY26, our CFO is about to open the budget module for looking at that, but the first public portion of that process will take place next month when we make a presentation to the planning board for the capital improvements program. Looking at the central fire station, I'll defer that to Chief Haggard, who will make a presentation during one of his agenda items this evening. And also, kudos to the community, where on December 17th, the town was recognized by the Commissioner of Business and Economic Affairs for the town's designation of a housing champion, which speaks to our zoning and economic development activities to broaden opportunities for housing of all types in the community. Our planning director accepted the recognition, and the event was attended by Councilors Foote and Granassi, and there was 18 communities throughout the state which earned this designation. And lastly, I'd like to spend a few minutes going through our tax rate, because there's always a lot of folks in the community compare tax rates to neighboring communities. Derry's is typically higher, which doesn't necessarily mean our tax burden is higher. So we'll walk through that. What we do every year is we benchmark against New Hampshire's 10 largest communities. As you know, Derry is number 4. Owen? Our most recent rate was set at 1869. There are 4 legal components. There are really 3 components. There's the town, the county. The local and state school are really one, because the state school tax is assessed locally, collected locally, and expended locally. So there's really 3 different composites of our tax rate. And the tax rate simply is the amount a property taxpayer pays per $1,000 of property value. And based upon the policies in Concord, property taxes fund the majority of our local government services. You can see on the town side, about 53% of our general appropriations are funded from the property tax. You know, we don't include the water, wastewater, cable, and capital improvements. Those are either, the first three are dedicated funds, and the capital improvements is a gross number, and that debt is actually paid in the operating through the finance department budget. So 53% of general fund appropriations on the town side are funded from the property tax. On the school side, it's even more pronounced, whereby about 70% of the school budget is funded through our local property tax. Now, when we set the tax rate, and it's actually set by the State Department of Revenue Administration, it's really the sum of the taxes raised by the council when you approve your budget, usually in May. The taxes raised by the voters to provide school services, which happens at the March election, and also the taxes raised by the county delegation to provide county services, which usually happens in June. So you add up the sum of those three buckets, and you divide by the amount of taxable property, and that results in our tax rate. Now, folks look at the tax rate as a measure of efficiency, and it's really not. To give you an example, one thing we measure every year is our assessed valuation per capita. And as you can see, of the 10 largest communities, Derry's assessed value per capita is about $163,000. We are ranked 7th of the largest communities. We're only behind Rochester, Manchester, and Concord. And Concord will be passing us. Concord hasn't completed a reval in a couple of years. They'll be wrapping up in 2026, so I'm sure they'll be jumping above us. We'll be in 8th place. You contrast that with our assessed value to capita against our neighbors, Londonderry and Salem. In Londonderry, the assessed value per capita is about $84,000 more than what we have here, and Salem is at least $50,000 higher. So you can see, and that goes to the disparity in the different tax rates. What we look at is what are we asking our community members to pay to support those different services. And although Derry is the 4th largest community in the state, our commitment per capita is the 7th highest, or 3 from the bottom. And commitment per capita is an imperfect formula, because that doesn't take into account our commercial industrial property. So currently, we have about 16% of our assessment base is from commercial industrial land. So you can see under this is that Derry raises about 8% below the median of our 10 largest communities. We are 23% below the highest commitment and 36% above the lowest commitment per capita. So looking at a tax burden, we also look at what's the tax burden per capita. How much are we asking each taxpayer to contribute to the town portion? And you can see again, we're the 4th largest community. Our rate is the 6th lowest, and our tax effort per capita is the 8th out of 10, which means there are 7 other communities which ask their citizens to pay more per capita to fund municipal services. Looking at the school side, and this is not per student cost, this is the school tax burden per capita, and again, 4th largest in the community. The rate is the 3rd highest. However, you can see is that Derry is just about at the median, whereby it's $2,099 per capita, and the median is $2,090. So they're right in the middle. So the takeaways is, again, Derry is the 4th largest community. Our tax burden for municipal service is the 8th lowest, and our burden is 17% below median, or 32% below the community with the greatest burden, and 24% above the community with the lowest burden. And the Derry tax burden for school services, it was right in the middle at 5. Again, the burden is just at the median. They're 28% below the community with the greatest burden, and 101% above the community with the lowest burden. Manchester has the lowest school district burden among the 10 communities, and the next lowest one is about 50% higher from Manchester. So Manchester is really an outlier. So I think this information is helpful when people talk about the tax rate and they compare to different communities. Again, what we look to do is maintain our efficiency and keeping our tax burden per capita as low as we can. Thank you.
Council Fred?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dave, is it possible to put that on the website somewhere?
Sure, absolutely.
For people's convenience to go look at?
Sure.
Thank you.
Council Churchill?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Real quick, Dave, I get this all the time. When the towns do reassessing, a lot of people have a misconception of the towns actually raising additional taxes. And can you just briefly touch into that?
Yeah, the easy thing to remember, as we just stated, the town's budget is completed in May, the school is in March, and the county is in June, and the assessments are finalized in the fall. So what the assessment process does is that it makes sure that all taxpayers are paying their proportionate share. So it's not a question of raising additional dollars, it's a question of redistributing the burden among all the different taxpayers.
Okay, and then one more quick one would be I've heard it in different towns, I won't name the towns. Some of the towns have gotten, they'll do the assessments 5 years or even longer. And with property values that go up very quickly, I believe the law says that you should look at reassessing between, I don't know what it is, 80 or 85%?
90 and 110.
And
right.
Derry's done a fantastic job. We do it, basically, we've been looking at the numbers every couple of years because we don't want to see these big deltas where I'm hearing from other towns that are border towns from us, they're getting sticker shock because they don't see it done for either 5 years or longer. And then when the state comes in and says you got to reassess, when they're reassessing, they're getting sticker shocks. We don't get that here, correct?
Right. Well, one thing we look at is for an example, let's say our overall assessment increased 15% over 2 years, because we do it every other year here. And so if your assessment increased by 20%, then you may not have been carrying your proportionate share in the past. And if your value's gone up less than 15%, then you carried more of that burden. So it's much more equitable that we have the revals every 2 years and try to keep everybody, like, what we use, I don't really look at the median, I look what they call a coefficient of dispersion, and that's a formula which they use to show you how far is everybody from the middle. And when you get CODs above 15, it's problematic. Ours is usually around 10, which means everybody's tightly clustered to that medium assessment, so we have proportionality and nobody's carrying more than their fair share.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you for that. That was a good presentation. I like the suggestion to put it on the website. Thank you. Moving on to our public hearings, we have 3 this evening. The first is Agenda Item 24-119, Resolution 2024-072, to convey town land on Central and Abbott Courts. Town Administrator Dave Karen presenting.
Okay, thank you. The council may recall you approved a massive development agreement with Lansing Melbourne Group for the development of a parking garage, and also multifamily, and also commercial and retail in phase 2 of the project. So one of the segments of our agreement is to transfer the land to LMG. At the end of the day, when the project is completed, the town will own the land under the parking garage and the parking garage itself, and LMG will own the rest of the land. So the state law is RSA 4114A, and it sets forth a pretty extensive process whereby we need 2 public hearings, and then the council can act at the 3rd meeting. So we have public hearings scheduled for tonight and for January 21st. To refresh the council, we've agreed at a purchase price of the land of $6,000 per unit. And so based on 117 units in phase 1 and 20 units in phase 2, we anticipate a final price of $822,000. That will go back into the TIF development fund to help defray the cost of building the parking garage, which would be available not only to this development, but all the users of our downtown commerce and restaurants.
Thank you. Other Questions?
Move to open the public hearing.
Second.
Oh, yes, sorry, I should go there first. Motion to open public hearing and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, public hearing is open.
Oh, and anybody online?
Seeing none, rise online.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, seeing no one online and no one jumping to the forefront, motion to close the public hearing.
Motion by Council McEachern, second by Council Churchill to close public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now, are there any questions?
Pretty straightforward.
No, this is, we've been
Right.
doing this for a month of Sundays. I'm ready to read a motion if you
Well, there is
want.
no motion tonight because we need further public hearing, so.
I'm sorry.
The next
I was
public
just looking at
hearing
my
will
sheet.
be,
I apologize.
next
I jumped
public
the gun.
hearing will be on January 21st at
I
our
jumped
next
the gun.
meeting.
And actually, the resolution would be adopted by the council on February 4th. You have to wait another meeting under state
Right.
law, so.
So you just sit tight. We'll get there. We'll get there eventually.
Okay, Madam Chair, but it was in the package.
It was there.
It was in the package.
All right, so we'll have our second hearing on the 21st and then final hearing on the 4th of February. 4th of February, yeah. All right. Agenda item 24120, resolution 2024-079, to apply for and accept AFG funding for fire department cardiac monitors. Fire Chief Sean Haggett presenting.
Good evening. I am joined this evening with Assistant Chief Greg Laro. Assistant Chief Laro has been the lead on this project and will be presenting this evening.
Good evening, councilors, Madam Chair. All right, so many of you remember that I appeared in front of you last year to request approval to pursue an AFG grant, so I'm back this year to do it again. So if you're not familiar, AFG, the Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program, is run through FEMA. It's a very competitive process, and one of the things that is a high priority for the AFG program is cardiac monitors, of which we fortunately, unfortunately maybe even, are in need of replacing quite a few of ours. So let me get to the first slide. So we carry 9 LifePak 15 cardiac monitors, across our front-run fleet. So of those 9, 7 of them are over 10 years of age. FEMA and industry-wide, it's recognized that they have a 5 to 7 year lifespan. So these 7 of the 9 have significantly exceeded their service life. Of those, 4 are no longer covered by a service plan. What that means is that the manufacturer will not even offer us a service plan for it. So it's not an option. The 2 oldest ones we're beginning to see difficulty in sourcing parts for them. And the cost per unit is $67,000. So that includes the equipment as well as a 4-year manufacturer service plan. So what do cardiac monitors do for us? So first and foremost, they offer us the ability to detect and treat lethal cardiac rhythms, and additionally defibrillate patients whose hearts have stopped beating. Those are the obvious ones that we use them for, but in addition, one of the great features of these is that they're very sensitive and allow us to detect what's called a myocardial infarction, which is, in layman's terms, a heart attack. So early recognition, diagnosis, and treatment of myocardial infarctions is what truly saves lives. So these monitors, again, allow us to do that. They monitor exhaled carbon dioxide, so you might wonder why that's important. That is one of the first and key signs that we've had a successful resuscitation, in the field. So that is an invaluable tool for us. Along those same lines, carbon monoxide. So what does that do for us? It allows us to detect not just in civilian populations when they've been exposed to carbon monoxide, but also in our own members when they've fought a structure fire and been exposed to carbon monoxide. That goes hand in hand with exposure to hydrogen cyanide. The 2 of them together kill nationwide many firefighters every year. And then finally, it allows us to transmit the data that we're finding in the field directly to the hospital, to the emergency room, and subsequently the cardiac catheterization lab, so that not only are they prepared and ready for us, but they know exactly what we're looking at when we're still in the field. So here again tonight to request authorization to pursue this grant, and we're requesting $246,748 through the AFG grant. That includes a 10% cost share of $24,000 and some change. That would be funded through the Fire Department's Capital Reserve Fund in FY '26, and that would replace those 4 oldest monitors. Does anybody have any questions?
Is there a motion to open public hearing? Remember this time.
So moved. Second.
All right. Motion by Counsel Foot to open public hearing, second by Counsel Canesi. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, public hearing is
Owen?
open.
Owen,
Seeing none, rise online, Madam Chair.
seeing none rise here, I will make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion to close public hearing by Counsel McEachern. I think that was second by Counsel Canesi. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, public hearing is closed. Any questions from council? Counselor Webb, shocking.
I'm glad to hear about since most of the general public doesn't know the importance of hydrogen cyanide, carbon monoxide, and the 12-weed, because there's a significant field of evidence that is showing that the higher levels of CO trigger the HCN, which is then appears as an infarction on the 12-weed. So I think they're very valuable for that. But that brings up my concern, which is I know the AFG grants are highly competitive. Every department in the country is trying to access that limited amount of funds. What's your plan if you don't get it?
So, as you stated, these are incredibly valuable diagnostic and therapeutic tools in the field. Therefore, we're committed to trying to identify additional revenue sources. Some of the ones that we understand are out there include possible appropriation of opioid funds that have been made available through the state of New Hampshire. As in the past, we could continue to fund this through additional CAP impact if we wanted to. There's maybe the opportunity again to adjust what we may have missed in this year's AFG request to resubmit in the following year.
Thank you.
Once he's done, I have a quick question. Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. So replacing, you have a total of 9 of them, correct, you said? And you're replacing only 4.
Correct. The 4 oldest ones that are not even covered by a manufacturer service plan. The other ones we're still able to get covered through that service plan. And the oldest ones are version 1 and 2 of the software, which is not even serviceable by the manufacturer.
So we get the 4, and then we can look to try to replace all the rest. I guess what I'm getting at is at some point we need to replace all of them, so hopefully we'll look at a plan to get all the new equipment in and, you know, because they do save lives, so it's something we need.
Correct.
So, okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, I move to adopt Resolution 2024-079 to apply for and accept AFG funding for the Fire Department cardiac monitors. Whereas Section 9.15 of the Town Charter authorizes the Town Council to apply for, accept, and expend funds received from the state and federal governments. Whereas the Fire Department seeks to replace cardiac monitors in its ambulances, and whereas a grant opportunity may provide 90% of the funding for this program, now therefore be it resolved in Council, Town Administrators hereby authorized to sign grant applications and agreements with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security for an assistance to firefighters grant for up to $256,000 in project funding to purchase 4 cardiac monitors. Further, upon successful receipt of the grant, as agents to expend, authorize the transfer of up to $25,600 from the Fire Department Capital Reserve Fund to provide the 10% local match. This resolution take effect upon its passage.
Second.
Motion by Counsel Foot, second by Counsel McEachern. On the motion, Counsel Churchill?
Yes.
Counsel Webb?
Yes.
Counsel Foot?
Yes.
Counsel Flood?
Yes.
Counsel Ganesi?
Yes.
Counsel McEachern?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Last kind of public hearing is item number 24-121, Resolution 2023-036, CDBG authorization for the Upper Room study results. Upper Room Executive Director Brenda Gugersberg presenting. Good evening.
Hi, everybody. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for having me. So about a year, maybe 2 years ago, I sat before many of you and asked permission to do a feasibility study with the help of a CDBG grant that the town would assist with. Over the last year, the Upper Room performed that feasibility study. We worked with SFC Engineering and did a full evaluation of our property, our building, all of that, and it was a beautiful plan. And at the end of that plan, we met with community members and our board and some team members that we were trying to pull together to look at this opportunity. And in October, our board decided that the cost of the project was more than we were willing to take on at this point. It was over $7 million, and we were not in a position and did not feel that was the right thing to do for the organization. So we have decided not to proceed with that project as it was identified.
Thank you.
I was gonna say, make a motion to open a public hearing?
Kind of. So I just need to, we don't really have to have as formal a public hearing, as my understanding, that I just need to say we're having a public hearing. I'm going to read a lot of what you just said, but I'm going to read a script, and then if there is any public comment, we will invite you to have that. So script I have here states, community development block grant funds are available to municipalities through the New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority. Up to $500,000 annually is available for economic development projects, up to $500,000 for public facility projects, up to $500,000 for housing projects, up to $350,000 for emergency activities, and up to $25,000 is available per planning study grant. All CDBG projects must primarily benefit low and moderate income persons. The purpose of this hearing is to present the results of and take public comment on a CDBG-funded planning study. The Upper Room, a family resource center located at 36 Shanita Road, Derry, New Hampshire, 03038, conducted a planning study for a potential expansion at the facility at 36 Shanita Road, Derry, New Hampshire. The study provided the Upper Room with an evaluation of current facility and an alternative of a building addition or modification that would increase meeting and classroom space. The majority of Upper Room's clients are of low and moderate income. The study was completed in October 2024 by SFC Engineering. The final conclusion was that this project would cost more than $7 million. It included the space and the land modifications, which would include new parking, septic, heating and air systems, fire suppression, and all ADA-required entries, bathrooms, and parking. At the October 16, 2024 meeting of the TUR Board of Directors, it was decided that they would not proceed with this project at this time, as it was more than they anticipated spending. They will be entering a 2025 strategic plan and will be discussing space and options, and most likely will identify ideas to move forward for our space needs. So at this time, if there is anybody that has any public comment they would like to share, by all means, come up and do so.
Seeing none rise online, Madam Chair.
All right. So I don't see anyone rising in the room either, so we will close the public hearing on this, and thank you for coming in to present this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that, just to explain why that was a little different, that was just to comply with the CDBG regulations. It wasn't an official public hearing for a resolution of the council. Okay, on to new business. Agenda item 25-05, resolution 2025-001, to extend the term of intermunicipal agreements with the town of Auburn to supply emergency medical and dispatch services. Fire Chief Sean Haggart presenting.
Good evening again. This evening we're presenting to seek authorization for the town administrator to sign 2 New Hampshire RSA 53A compliant intermunicipality agreements to continue providing fire and EMS dispatch and ambulance services to the town of Auburn, New Hampshire. For this evening, I'm going to be assisted by Assistant Chief Greg Laro, Communications Supervisor Charles Tinkham here, if needed for any specific questions to comms or statistics. EMS Captain Division Ed King wishes he could be here tonight, but he's seeing his daughter off to travel abroad to Italy for a semester. A little bit of history. Derry's been providing contracted services to Auburn for well over 35 years for fire EMS dispatch as well as ambulance transport. The partnership has proven beneficial for both communities. Auburn receives high-quality fire EMS dispatching and ambulance services, while Derry receives associated revenue from the approved annual subsidy for the dispatch ambulance contracts, plus the associated revenues from the ambulance billing. A significant benefit to Derry is that both contracts allow for seamless and efficient operations. One of the things to highlight here is that if Derry has an incident that requires mutual or automatic aid that draws upon the town of Auburn, Derry is performing that dispatch. So it saves additional tasks in trying to get those resources to us in a timely manner. In 2024, Derry's Communication Center dispatched 760 fire and EMS incidents to the town of Auburn. That makes up about 7% of Derry's total call volume that's handled in the Communication Center. The ambulance service responded to 372 incidents, resulting in 260 transports to a medical facility at an average billing rate of $616. So that puts the annual revenue from the ambulance service to the town of Auburn at an additional over $160,000. The current 5-year contract with Auburn is set to expire June 30th, 2025. And last night, the Board of Selectmen unanimously approved extending the contract renewal for 7 years with the town of Derry, if you guys do as well. In the future, we're looking to extend. Previously, there was a 5-year contract in place. Both towns see it beneficial if we could move to a 7-year contract. Each contract, meaning the fire and EMS dispatch as well as the ambulance services, include a 3% escalator for each year. In addition, the ambulance revenue, as stated before, would be parallel to the billing of the citizens of Derry. So what I'm trying to say there is if there's a rate increase in Derry, that also reflects in Auburn. Any questions?
Questions?
Nope.
Councilor
Pretty
Churchill?
straightforward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Chief, you said it's a 3% per year escalator, correct?
Correct.
And if there's, but did you also say if there's any increases on the Derry side, those also affect Auburn? Did you say that?
I guess 2 things to mention there. Derry is due for a, to examine if we're, should have a rate increase in our EMS building. It's written in the contract that if we do have an increase in our rates, that it automatically is the same for our contracted communities. The second part I was going to go there, I don't recall. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, and I'm just curious because I know, some of the stuff in the news with Exeter Hospital, the ambulance service is discontinuing, and Plastow is basically picking up some of that slack. I guess there's some talk with some of those smaller towns. So I guess the 3% would be, I guess we're going to be either at a break even or we're actually making a little bit of money.
And this is the dispatch contract, correct?
So it's 3% built into both. One way that we looked at this to try to understand the financial benefit to us is a new ambulance right now roughly costs $415,000. The contents in it are probably about an additional $225,000. The estimated maintenance per ambulance is $7,000 per year. So all those numbers put together over the life of the contract is $710,000. Divide that by the 7. The cost of providing the service we estimate is $101,000 roughly. So each year, the annual subsidy alone covers the operational fees. So then the EMS billing comes in additionally, as well as the revenue achieved from the dispatching.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just and further, there are really 2 basic components of these contracts. One is a fixed charge. That charge is being increased by 3% a year. The second one on the EMS side is actually the billing for transports, and that's going to mirror what we charge Derry residents. But also, these contracts is one component which allows us to be able to staff 4 stations here in Derry, so we can make sure that our response time to Derry residents are hopefully in the 4-minute range. So this really is it's a plus for us on the revenue side to help us do that.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, I move to adopt resolution number 2025-001 to extend the term of intermunicipal agreements with the town of Auburn to supply emergency medical and dispatch services Whereas Section 5.1 of the Town Charter designates the Town Council as the governing and legislative body of the town. Whereas the Fire Department has maintained a lengthy relationship with the Town of Auburn by providing EMS and fire dispatch services. And whereas the current agreements are scheduled to expire June 30th, 2025, and Derry and Auburn have negotiated 7-year successor agreements which will benefit both parties. Now therefore be it resolved in council, the town administrator is hereby authorized to execute intermunicipal agreements developed in accordance with RSA 53A between the towns of Derry and Auburn to continue providing emergency, medical, and dispatch services through June 30th, 2035. This resolution take effect immediately upon its passage.
On the motion, Council Chair Cholo?
Yes.
Council Webb?
Yes.
Council Foot?
Yes.
Council Flood?
Yes.
Council Canesi?
Yes.
Council McEachern?
Yes.
And chair votes yes, motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Next up is item 25-06.
Madam Chair, can we take a few minutes to give you an update on the fire station?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yep, absolutely. My other copy had a note because I knew I was going to forget. I changed agendas.
It's on a different PowerPoint, Owen.
So as Owen is bringing that up, Assistant Chief Greg Laro, among the many skills he's brought to his position is a strong background in the trades of construction, as well as some in construction project management. So as Assistant Chief Laro moved into his role, he naturally became the best pick for liaison and working cooperatively with DPW Director Mike Fowler and moving this project forward. So this evening, Assistant Chief Laro will lead the update.
Yeah, I can't thank future Town Administrator Mike Fowler enough for the help that he's given us with a lot of the little bumps, because as I'm sure you're aware, any construction project has bumps, has hiccups along the way. So Mike has been amazing in helping us deal with those issues. So first, I want to just let you know that the project has moved along very well so far. The weather has been very cooperative with us. Although it does feel cold and windy out right now, we're not dealing with any snow on the site. So that is allowing, that allowed the project to get weather tight to the point where work can continue throughout the winter now. The mortar within the masonry walls can cure at the right temperature. So it was very critical for us to get to this weather tight point by now in order to keep the project on schedule. So as you're looking at this, this will be the front of the building, standing on the apron, looking at the bays. I know it looks very rough to most of you, but to us, it looks amazing compared to what it has been so far through the process. So again, we've just got the sheathing up, the weather tightness. This is on the western side of the building from the Rite Aid side, looking towards the building and the maintenance rooms and storage rooms that are going to be on the first floor. Again, just the back of the building, you'll see where the blue lull is. That's where the back 5 doors to the apparatus bay are going to be. The area on the left with the yellow sheathing on it is going to be an alternative administration entrance. Let's stop going back and go forward. So this is that administrative entrance that I was referring to, and then this would be the eastern side of the building where all the admin offices, and then on the second floor would be the crew bunk rooms. And that is my brief update for you. So does anybody have any questions on where the project's at?
Questions?
No, it looks good.
Looks great.
Great, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I apologize for skipping over.
No worries.
Look at, we all go to the same barber.
Noticing it's a trend.
Me too.
Okay, now we'll move on to item 25-06, Resolution 2025-002, to authorize an agreement for general assistance administration. Town Administrator Dave Karen presenting.
Thank you. Back on July 1st of 2018, the council supported a decision to outsource our general assistance process. We used to have 2 full-time employees who used to manage that. And given the complexities and the opportunities for leveraging additional resources, we went in that direction. And since that time, we've contracted with Community Health Services, which is a local provider here in Shenito Road in Derry. They also provide general assistance services at the towns of Londonderry and Hampstead. And based upon our statutory requirement to support people in need under the law, we felt this was the most efficient way to go. And so we're looking forward to amend the current contract. We haven't had an adjustment in the contract for a number of years. So we're looking for a 5% increase in the expense, which will be funded from the general assistance budget. To give you a sense is that in FY18, prior to our agreement, the town expended about $108,000 in general assistance. And since our agreement, up to the end of FY24, we've expended an average of about $28,000 for general assistance. More importantly is that the CHS has successfully leveraged funds of about $155,000 a year. That is skewed due to the amount of federal assistance which became available in the last couple of years, but typically the leveraging equals or exceeds the amount of funds expended by the town. And finally, probably the most important, which really drove us towards CHS, is that they have case management appointments with the clients under our combined goal of trying to return these folks to self-sufficiency. And since we've transitioned to CHS, they've conducted over 970 case management appointments. So the agreement is pretty much the same, except previous ones we had a finite term. We left this one open-ended. And also, we had a termination clause of 60 days, and we increased that to 90, which is a reality whereby if we ever did decide to go in a different direction, then we need that amount of time to recover and find another service. So we would recommend that the council embrace Resolution 2025-002.
Are there any questions? I just wanted to clarify, so we have had, we do kind of, this was just an expiring of the agreement, and we were okay.
That's correct.
This was a new one, okay. Want to read the motion or make a motion?
All right, so Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion. I move to authorize the agreement of General Assistance Administrations number 2005-002, whereas Section 5.1 of the Town Charter designates the Town Council as the governing legislative body of the town, and whereas the town has retained the services of community health services, CHS, to manage and administer its general assistance program pursuant to RSA 165 since July 1, 2018, and whereas CHS provides a comprehensive safety net for our residents most in need by collaborating with area social service agency partners and offering case management services with the goal of returning all clients to self-sufficiency, and whereas both the town council, both the town and its general assistance clients have benefited from the utilization of these services. Now therefore be resolved in council that the town administrator is hereby authorized to execute an agreement with Community Health to continue providing general assistance administration services until such time as said agreement is terminated by the town council. This resolution shall take effect immediately upon its passage, adopted January 7, 2025.
Motion by Councilor Granessi, second by Councilor McEachern on the motion. Oh, sorry.
Just a point of clarification, the resolution number should be 2025, not 2005?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
I
Just a
made a
little
note of
typo,
that.
that's all.
I didn't
but-
catch that. Yeah, 2025-02.
Thank you for that.
yeah. So I will vote yes.
Councilor Webb?
I'll vote yes.
Councilor Foot?
Yes.
Councilor Flood?
Yes.
Councilor Granessi?
Yes.
Councilor McEachern?
Yes.
And chair votes yes, motion passes 7-0. Next up, 25-07 and 25-08 kind of go together. Resolution 2025-003 to amend the Derry Community Electric Aggregation Plan. And 2508 is Resolution 2025-004 to authorize a joint powers agreement, cost-sharing agreement, and member services contract with Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire. So current DPW Director Mike Fowler presenting. I'm assuming you'll present a little bit on both at the same time, and then we can take them separately.
Madam Chair, can we take these two separately?
Well, he'll present it. I'm going to take the two motions separately.
Because I'm going to make a motion to table the second one.
Yes.
Okay, good evening. As the council recalls, we were here about a month ago to discuss the town's options relative to our electric aggregation plan. So just to kind of do a real brief recap of where we are. Back in 2023, through the Net Zero Committee, there was a separate group that was conceived to come up with an electric aggregation plan that has been approved by both the New Hampshire PUC and the Town Council. And this is the framework for the town to proceed with what is also commonly known as community power. Many communities are in the midst of that, which provides aggregation services for all of the residential customers within a particular community, and in the thought to be more competitive than their default supplier. So in Derry, we have 4 franchises. We are primarily Eversource, at probably 70-75% of our customers, and then the second most would be New Hampshire Cooperative. We do have a few customers for Liberty and a few customers for Unitil, but by and large, we have 2 main default utilities. As time had gone on, we had engaged with Standard Power, who had generated or helped generate our plan. They currently had been providing pricing that was not competitive with where some of the default rates were. So at the time, there was a decision in 2024 not to deploy based on the fact that those rates were not competitive to rates that had been dropping from the default utilities. As time has gone on, we reached the fall, there was a recommendation from the Net Zero Task Force to separate from the Standard Power Group and going forward with CPC or NH, and they had provided some pricing that was lower than the default rates. But what we wanted to see was there was a pricing window that had to be put forward, and so when we met with council in November, we didn't have all the data. So one of the items that we had conducted, we met with CPC and NH. We also had received pricing from all of the default utilities because that's the window that they have to present to the New Hampshire Public Utilities Commission. So just want to briefly give the council an update of all of the rates that are on the table as of this meeting tonight, and then it will guide you to looking at 2 potential resolutions, which I'll go over here in just a second. So just to look at the rates. So to start off, Eversource default for the period of February 1st to July 31st, 2025 is 8.929 cents per kilowatt hour. So that's a rate that has come through and has been approved. The New Hampshire Electric Cooperative is slightly less expensive at 8.6 cents per kilowatt hour. And then we've received the rate from CPCNH that was recently approved. That was the last to provide a rate on January 2nd. That rate is also 8.9 cents per kilowatt hour. And Standard Power had a 6-month rate, an 8-month rate of 9.01 cents per kilowatt hour, but because of their structure, Standard Power has provided us with a new rate as of today that's slightly less at 8.76 cents per kilowatt hour. So all of those rates are within the same ballpark. So you could almost make the argument that the statewide community power effort has taken all of the utilities and some perhaps forced them to be a little bit more competitive. Also, this cycle of energy procurement has involved a different method where now the utilities, the default utilities, Eversource, Unitil, Liberty can all go on the spot markets to purchase their needs, which does add some potential exposure throughout. And that this is a bigger picture that has to be addressed through New Hampshire PUC. But for the purposes of your decision, there's 2 resolutions that are in front of you tonight. The first resolution, which is the 2025-003, there's a number of recommended changes to your electric aggregation plan that will permit the council to proceed with other procurement methods for selecting a vendor other than Standard Power. So in other words, they're a traditional broker model, whereas CPC&H has a different, it's a joint powers agreement. So there's a number of recommended language changes that we're recommending that you enact to allow you to have the options and flexibilities to then select a vendor that is it's congruent with your plan. The second resolution, 2025-004, would be to then adopt that opportunity for moving forward with CPC&H. So the actual resolution has been drafted in the affirmative, as if you were to proceed. But again, understanding that, looking at the impacts of the pricing, basically it's a negligible difference between the default rates that you have from our main utilities for all of them. So basically, there's no change. If everybody stays default, unless your usage goes up or down based on your individual circumstance, you're going to pay the same in any of the scenarios for the next 6-month period. If somebody has been fortunate enough to have a long-term agreement, perhaps that they did with a third-party supplier, they might be able to beat that. I know when we go online with our solar, we'll actually beat those rates by about 2 cents. But other than that, if you're just a regular residential, under the next 6-month structure of all of these numbers that I've presented, you're not talking more than maybe a variance of about $1 or $2 per month in either direction. The next rate setting period for everybody will be presented again sometime in July. That time frame for the next period, which would start 8/1/25. So every one of these groups would be moving in 6-month increments, including CPC&H. One thing I would point out about the difference between Standard Power, they're able to be a little bit more nimble. They have, in the past, suggested longer term, 12, 24, 36-month agreements. They're now looking at some of the shorter terms to be more flexible with what the current market rates are. Whereas CPC&H, the rate adjusts every 6 months by vote of their board of directors. There's an intricate formula that they have to figure out. But you do end up being in a 36-month cycle with them as a community, because if you opt out, there are some penalties that you may incur. We would be one of the larger groups within CPC&H if we were to go in that direction. So just want to make sure that everybody in the community is aware of that. So that's kind of the update since the last time we met. Happy to be, answer any questions. You may want to solicit some, some advice from Chair Jeff Moulton of the Net Zero Task Force, but essentially those 2 resolutions have been drafted for the purposes of either moving forward or not, and into CPC&H.
Thank you. Councilor Churchill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things that I do for a living is I'm in the real estate business, and in the real estate business, you not only look at price, but you look at terms, which are very important. I'm reading on page 5, and I believe Mr. Fowler just mentioned it, CPC&H purchases power contracts for lengths up to 3 years. Thus, should a member seek to withdraw, the organization needs to find other users of the power contracts originally reserved for the withdrawing member, or the withdrawing member remains responsible for the portion of the power contracts. That language doesn't really sit well with me, to be honest. The way I looked at this is if the consumer could get a lower price, that's one thing. But if I've got some risk as a town, I'm not willing, as an elected official for the town, obviously I don't like that language, and I don't want to put any risk on any of the town to make up any of that stuff. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one, but I will
I think Chairman
Moulton?
Yes, I'm going to invite you up as well. And and either of you, I don't know, can ask, so I'll ask my question so that you have that too in case you want, and then I'll invite you up as well. I noticed in reading through the agreement, and I'm just curious, I'm sure there's multiple reasons you may not have answers. Is there several, there are some that say had withdrawn, and I just wanted to be clear, though, were those members that had signed that withdrew from their legislative body, or communities that withdrew from this plan? Did you?
In terms of,
Yeah,
which
like-
section are you referring to on the staff report, or?
On the agreement under the signatories, there's like Hancock, for instance, says withdrew as a member. Is that the person withdrew as a member of as a signatory, or the community withdrew as a member from the program? And if it was the community, do we have any ideas on why they withdrew?
Yeah, I don't know. And I think one of the things that we examined when Dave and I had the conversation was got so many different communities. Some have boards of selectmen, some are as large as, Derry, which, I think we would be the largest member out of all of that in the coalition. So it started in the kind of Upper Valley area, and now it has moved, I believe Portsmouth's looking at it, but there's some towns that might have populations of 1,000, and they're being aggregated with towns that are well over 20, 30, 40, 1,000 people. So I think one of the things we wanted to make sure is we understood that going in, if they're going to be purchasing power on behalf of, well over 100 million kilowatt hours per year, that they understand what's going on. And if mass numbers of people in Derry, because remember, this is an opt-in for the town, but individuals can opt out if they so choose. And let's just assume that for some reason there's an unfavorable number in our future, 12 months out, where the default rate can significantly beat the CPC and NH rate. Let's just say half of our customers decide to migrate out. They're left holding 50 million kilowatt hours that have to be reassigned. So we wanted to make sure that we illuminated what that potential risk is, because if we don't meet those obligations, there could be some penalties. So I don't know specifically about Hancock, but I think we wanted to be diligent about what we were getting into, as far as it is somewhat unprecedented in terms of a larger member like us getting in and contemplating that potential down the road. If we had to get out, what were those penalties going to be?
Ms. Moulton, did you want to come up?
Yeah, I think to address your concern, there is the penalty for the town to drop out. So there's a 3-year commitment there, but any individual or business can opt out. And there is no quantity of people that are required. So I don't see the risk to the average resident or business if they see a rate they like better, that they can opt out of the program at any time and go to another party for a lower rate. But the town itself has to stay in for 3 years.
I think that's the risk you're talking about.
If I may, if you, so let me see if I understand this right. So we all look at the energy costs in 6-month blocks. Yet this contract wants me to sign for 3 years. If I sign a 3-year contract, there's a lot of question marks after 6 months. I don't know where that number's gonna go. And that's my problem. I don't work with question marks, so.
Well, their view is that the majority of people are not going to opt out. And so they're just looking for the town's commitment to stay in the program. But remember, too, that CPC&H is really a driving force in the market right now. They've got over 60 towns and counties. Derry is not by far the largest participant or potential participant. They represent almost 1/3 of consumers now in New Hampshire. So this is not yes, we'll make an impact on their numbers, but not a huge impact.
No disrespect. I'm an Eversource person. So I'm looking at the Eversource number and then the CPC. It's not a big difference for me.
No.
So it's almost break even, but yet I'm gonna, you know, it's a 3-year issue, it's a 3-year contract that the town's gonna sign. To me, I just don't like the way it's
Well,
set up.
if you looked at the rates for the last 2 years, you would see that there's been substantial savings up to this point in time. And, and one of the reasons Mike alluded to was there's been some changes at the PUC for allowing Eversource to go out into the spot market. The problem with what Eversource is doing is they, if they go into the spot market and get energy, and a month or two later, the prices surge for some unknown reason, Eversource is allowed to take that cost overrun and give it back to the consumers. They're not locked into that rate. Not only are they allowed to charge it to their own customers that use the supply, but they would also be allowed to charge CPC&H and Standard Power or anybody else. So there's legislation being introduced that we could use our help from our reps on, but it's a bipartisan bill that's going to prevent the utility from dumping their overages, cost overages onto non-participating suppliers. But this is one picture, this is one 6-month picture over the last 2 years. Over the last 2 years, they've shown significant savings for all the consumers within the 60-plus side.
So Jeff, no disrespect, I'm sort of equating it to me looking at my 401K and my SEP plan. 2 years ago, it could have been at a certain level, and I've got to monitor that. Just personally, I'm very, very conservative with that. If the contract was a 6-month contract, I'd feel a heck of a lot better. But it's the 3 years that's scaring me, to be honest. And that's just me. I don't know how other people feel, but.
Well, but you as an individual are not locked into the 3 years. You can opt out at any time.
I can opt out as a user, but then the town has to make up the difference, correct?
No.
Oh, am I misreading that?
No, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Only if you have to.
You're right.
You have to
But-
compensate if you opt out of the 3 years.
So sorry.
No. I was just going to say,
You're right.
I'm just going to use it as an example. I don't know if this is going to happen. So we sign up for the 3 years for the town. For some strange reason, 6 months from now, we're all in an opt-in. I'm sorry, we're all into that together. But let's say the charge is a lot higher, and then you've got half the Derry residents like, I'm not paying a higher rate. I can get a better rate somewhere else. And they drop. Me as a town, now I'm talking about a town, not as a user, I'm responsible to make up that difference. That's a risk that I'm not willing to take as an elected official. That's how I view it. And
Well, I'm not aware of any risk. I did not see that in any of the documents.
You're right. No, he's right. Because the town is us, and we are individuals. So if individuals in the town of Derry all of a sudden walk away, the town's left holding the bag, which ultimately is the taxpayers, because you
No,
can't,
the town-
you've got your rate.
The town's commitment is for 3 years
understand
to
that.
be a participating town. It is not to guarantee the number of users.
Yeah, but you're guaranteeing a certain rate that the town's gonna pay
No, we're
and make
not.
up the
No, we're
difference.
not.
a certain usage.
There's a certain usage in the grid that you're guaranteeing.
No, we're not. We're just.
It's in the contract.
The town is guaranteeing that we will participate.
Dave, you look like you want
Well,
to say something to me.
there's a couple things, is that, although CPC&H may not require the town to make up the difference, they're hanging the hat on that a lot of the residents will not pay attention to this and would pay higher costs if the costs were higher from CPC&H. And so that's why, we have an opt-in. Net Zero did a great job on developing the plan, but from my perspective, with that plan comes responsibility and transparency, because a lot of our folks just don't have the time to look at this information. So I think it's in our best interest to make sure that we try to get the best third-party provider or default with Eversource on behalf of our residents. Now, both Jeff and Mike talked about the emerging different rules and laws, and we were notified today that actually CPC&H is not signing up any new members for Q1 and Q2 FY25. So I think they're in the same boat we are, is it trying to let things settle out and understand how it impacts their business model and any new customers coming online. So based upon previous to today's information, the very similar rates between Eversource and CPC&H, and also recognizing that CPC&H is not signing up any new customers, at least through July, it is our recommendation that the council adopt the first resolution, which would give the town the flexibility to enter into a sort of a CPC&H agreement at some point in the future, and that you table the second one because it's really moot at this point. And even without not taking customers, you know, there's enough, I think there's enough questions whereby for getting 0.0029 cents advantage over Eversource, I don't think it's worth the risk, to be perfectly frank with you.
Yep, I'm okay with that.
I would agree with that, because CPC, well, mainly because CPC and kind of awaiting this game out to see what's going to happen. But I think that's, the concern is the same with everyone. If you're an Eversource customer and you don't like their supply rate, you can opt out to a third party. That's the same rules for everyone.
Any other questions or comments?
Jack.
Yeah, I just have a question on the structure of the CPC&H.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If, I didn't see it necessarily in the paperwork, what voice would the town have as part of the 60 communities to CPC&H that we might not have with PUC and Eversource?
So I can answer that question. Within the joint power agreement, we have an option to designate a member, which could be town administrator or their representative, to be part of their legislative group. But again, I mean, it's a group of 60 plus or minus communities. So you don't get a weighted vote on your population or anything of that nature. So we've been invited. If we were to join, we get a seat. You can, you know, get on certain boards that they have for policies and things of that nature. But, you know, obviously you're one of 60 members, not, you know, not weighted on your population.
It is a nonprofit organization, and they do have a board of directors of 16, and those 16 members do help decide the rates.
And how are the board of directors either appointed or approved? Is it through the 60 members?
16 are elected from the 60 members, yes.
The other question I have, which is, once the solar project comes online, how does that generator dovetail with this, if it does at all?
It really doesn't, because the solar project, we've designated through a net metering agreement that we will provide for the wastewater treatment plant behind the meter, all of the DPW buildings that are on that site. And then in that net metering agreement, there's roughly 30 buildings, town facilities, fire stations, police stations, that will utilize electricity. And then beyond that, whatever is excess will be sold to the grid, but we don't have a part of that transaction. So in other words, that's part of the power purchasing agreement and the lease with Encore. It goes to the grid.
Right.
But it gets redistributed, and we're not part of that financial equation. So the only benefit we get is for what we buy for the town buildings only. 6.8 cents.
There's 32 locations, and only one location can actually use the electricity, that being the waste and water works. So the other 29 or 30 stations, though, are eligible to join a program like this for their own supply.
Could you repeat that again? I mean, if we're doing, what's this, the solar project's gonna cover the town?
Town
Town
facilities.
6.8.
6.8 cents, 25-year agreement. It goes up roughly 2% a
I'm
year.
just, different levels. So they're gonna cover all the town buildings. What is this agreement covering town buildings?
So virtually none.
None.
Yeah, virtually
So-
none. There
so
might
the-
be a few pump stations, but let's
Okay,
say none
right,
is
but for-
negligible.
So the solar buildings, the solar project's gonna cover all the town facilities. This agreement is making us force customers to do an opt-out for the residents of Derry. This isn't gonna cover any town buildings.
More or less.
More or less. There may be an odd pumping station here or there,
I
right?
think one other thing we got to think about is the school district, that they are on third-party supply. The solar is not large enough at this
Right,
point
to
to
do the
support
school
that.
district, I know.
Yep.
So this project affects essentially all the residents and then the school buildings, essentially.
There's the other 29 buildings that can sign up for this.
Yeah, but they're not town-owned buildings. They're owned by the school. What
No, no,
29
no,
buildings?
I'm talking about, the way this works is the waste and water works, we use the power, some of it.
He just
And
told
now
us.
We'll export it. The other 29 buildings, like the library and everything, they can't reach the solar field to use that power, right?
No, that's not
So
what
they're
he
gonna
just
get
said.
it off, they're gonna buy the power from a third party.
That's not
but what we're
what
saying
Mike
is-
just said.
Yeah, but the question that Jim's asking is about the rate. So in other words, the solar, the PPA, those 30 buildings, we are all going to get 6.8 cents
Right.
in November of 2025.
That's,
for the net meter.
that's all the town buildings, the two libraries, the Public Works building, the new fire department, all the fire departments, the police station, right? They're all gonna be
That's-
covered by the solar project.
That's
They
my
get-
understanding.
They get credit, Mike, but they still have to buy the third-party rate.
Right.
Okay.
I understand what Jim's question is.
You get my question,
Yeah.
right? This isn't a debate.
No,
The
it's,
town's being covered by the solar agreement. So this agreement is only gonna cover all the residents in the school department, essentially.
Yes.
Okay. That was my question, that's all I need to hear. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? So
Would you
just-
like the resolution read?
Yes, so just as a reminder, the Resolution 2025-003 recommendation is to adopt this so that we have options for whatever we want to do down the road. 2025-004.
The next one, right?
Is the one that, for all intents and purposes, my understanding is moot, because even if we wanted to sign with CPC&H right now, we cannot, because they're not taking additional customers, so that would be, the recommendation would be to table that
So
right
we
now.
table that, okay.
So you can do with what you want, but that's the recommendations.
You want me to read it?
Sure, someone else read it?
Okay. Resolution 2025-003 to adopt the Derry Electric Aggregation Plan. Whereas Section 5.1 of the Derry Town Charter designates the town council as the governing and legislative body of the town. Whereas the town council under Resolution 2023-043 created the Electric Aggregation Committee pursuant to RSA 53E6, and whereas the town council under Resolution 2023-064 adopted the Electric Aggregation Plan, which has been approved by the Public Utilities Commission, and whereas they are now additional options to which the town may aggregate power purchases on behalf of its residences and businesses, providing additional cost savings opportunities, whereas revisions to the electric aggregation plan are required in order to consider these additional options. Now therefore be resolved in council that that the town council hereby accepts and adopts modifications to the Derry Community Power Electric Aggregation Plan as presented for the purposes of expanding the town's options for community power services to include the Joint Powers Agency model. Resolution shall take effect immediately upon passage.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Motion by Councilor McEachern, second by Councilor Ganesi. On the motion, Councilor Turatello?
I'm going to abstain, Madam Chair. I'm just going to say that I've got 4 more meetings left, so I don't feel comfortable right now, so I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Councilor Webb?
Yes.
Councilor Foot?
Yes.
Councilor Flood?
Yes.
Councilor Ganesi?
Yes.
Councilor McEachern?
No, I'm voting no because I don't see any benefit.
Okay. And chair votes yes. Motion passes 5-1-1. Okay. Next up is Resolution 2025-004 to authorize a joint powers agreement, cost-sharing agreement, and member services contract with
Madam Chair.
Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire.
On behalf, I would like to make a motion to table Resolution 2025-004 due to the pending issues of legislation as presented by the town administrator tonight.
We have a motion to table Resolution 2025-004.
Second.
Second by Councilor Chiricello. On the motion, Councilor Chiricello,
Yes.
Councilor Webb,
Yes.
Councilor Foot,
Yes.
Councilor Flood,
Yes.
Councilor Granessi,
Yes.
Councilor McGeckern.
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Motion passes 7-0 to table Resolution 2025-004. Councilor comments and liaison reports. Thank you.
Madam Chair, yeah. Earlier today, during the public forum, we had a resident talking about housing. And I can understand the complexity of the issue, but as somebody that, over the last couple of years, the information that I have received is that the state of New Hampshire is 60,000 housing units behind where it should be. And when you have those numbers, there's a correlation to the fact that we can't attract younger workers in this state. And a big part of that is housing. You can't, if you don't have affordable housing, you can't expect us to grow economically, fill the positions of nurses, firemen, policemen. And so while I respect the person who came up with his opinion, I'm in the complete opposite. That's number one. Number two, there was a statement that at Abbott Court we weren't doing any commercial, which is wrong. There is a commercial component. Yes, I will agree that the plan changed a little bit, but it also got scaled down quite a bit. So there was a major difference. You need to make this project viable, which it now is. But I want to make sure that everybody knows that there is a commercial component to this. So I just want to point that out. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Nope.
Councilor Webb?
Just two things. One was a random thought that came up from the audit, and it had to do with workers' comp income. And this was a concern that I had raised to a prior fire chief several years ago. If you're not aware of it, when a person gets injured here in Derry, we receive income from workers' comp that counts as revenue. And the concern I have is that we're not always taking advantage of it all. And it has to do with the liability of the injury. Here's the example, because it's pretty specific. A firefighter gets injured in a motor vehicle accident, or a police officer, or whatever, that's caused by another individual. They're not at fault. Workers' comp covers the injury that comes in as revenue. But I don't think what we've always captured was that person injury then goes out on workers, or goes out on leave because they're injured. The town has to backfill that position with overtime. That overtime is never recouped. It doesn't come back from workers' comp, particularly if that person ends up on light duty. And I don't think we've gone after the causing party of the accident. We've looked at, the property damage and so forth, but we've never, and the individual may have gone after them as bodily injury, but we, since that was an employee, I don't think we've ever gone after that causality to recoup the overtime expenditures that injury caused. That might be kind of an obtuse thing, but it's just a random thought that came from the audit report. And the other thing is the Health Insurance Trust has unilaterally changed some of the benefits that they're give its members. And we purchase our health insurance through the Health Insurance Trust. And I think there's a concern that where these unilateral changes could expose us to liability. And by the liability, I mean that is, I'll use the case law of the Professional Firefighters in New Hampshire versus the Health Trust in regards to public meetings, which was won several years ago. And part of the things is that because the Health Trust is, I can't remember the exact technical term for it, but basically is a public entity. So any contracts that we have with the Health Trust, if they're unilaterally changed by the Health Trust, could impact our labor contracts. And I think there's, just keep an eye on what those changes were. I can give you some more specific information.
Well, just to be clear, right, for some reason, the legislature said that NHMA and health trusts are public bodies, although legally they're not.
Yeah.
But they comply with 91A. The Council Webb's point is that they do have adjustments in their coverage every year, and they have a public meeting which every community, every member is invited to participate in that meeting. So they do have like a sort of town meeting process which they go through. And right now, our labor contracts, with exception of one, requires us to contract with Health Trust. Public Works and Teamsters have a different group, Allegiant Health. So
those are my only two comments.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Motion to adjourn, second by Council Flood. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Have a good evening, everyone.
You too.